Imagine walking through ancient Egypt in the middle of summer. The sun is brutal. The air feels like it's been sitting inside an oven. And somewhere inside a wealthy Egyptian household, someone is holding a piece of ice. Not snow, not something carried down from a frozen mountain. Actual ice. So how was that possible? There were no refrigerators, no electricity, no freezing machines. And Egypt is famous for being brutally hot. Yet ancient Egyptians knew that water could freeze under the right conditions. And the trick wasn't to fight the desert heat. It was to use the desert's strangest advantage, the night. The desert can be unbelievably hot during the day, but after sunset, the temperature can fall dramatically, and the sky above the desert can become incredibly clear. That creates something ancient Egyptians could take advantage of: radiative cooling. At night, objects exposed to a clear sky can lose heat by radiating it upward. And under the right conditions, a surface can actually become colder than the surrounding air. That's the key. You don't necessarily need freezing air to make ice. You need to remove enough heat from water, and the desert night can sometimes do exactly that. But there was a problem. If you're trying to freeze water, you can't simply leave a giant bucket sitting outside. The surrounding air can keep adding heat back into it. So the setup matters. Shallow containers work better because they expose more water to the night sky, and the container itself needs to be able to lose heat efficiently. Now imagine an ancient Egyptian placing a shallow layer of water outside after sunset. The sky is clear, the air is dry, there is little wind, and the container is exposed directly to the night sky. As the water loses heat, its temperature begins to fall. If conditions are just right, the surface can eventually reach the freezing point. And then something remarkable happens. Ice begins forming. But here's the catch. This did not mean Egyptians were casually making huge amounts of ice every day in the middle of a 50-degree Celsius afternoon. That's not how the process worked. The conditions had to cooperate. Clear skies, dry air, calm conditions, and temperatures that allowed enough heat to escape overnight. So the famous desert heat actually had a strange relationship with the process. The hotter the day, the more unbelievable the ice sounds. But the important moment wasn't the afternoon, it was the night. And this wasn't just theoretical. Ancient Egyptian sources and archaeological evidence have been associated with the use and production of ice in elite contexts, while ancient experiments have demonstrated that water can freeze during clear, dry desert nights through radiative cooling. But there's another question. If you managed to make ice, how did you keep it? Because making ice for a few hours is one problem, keeping it frozen in Egypt is another. And this is where ancient storage technology becomes important. Insulation can slow down the transfer of heat. A well-designed container or storage space can protect something cold from the much warmer environment around it. The goal isn't to stop heat completely. That's impossible. The goal is to make heat move slowly enough that the ice lasts. And ancient Egyptians were already extremely familiar with controlling temperature through materials, shade, depth, and evaporation. They didn't need to understand the physics mathematically. They only needed to discover which arrangements worked. And this is one of the most fascinating patterns in ancient technology. People often discovered physical principles long before they understood the science behind them. They didn't know about infrared radiation. They didn't know about thermal equilibrium. They didn't know the mathematics of heat transfer. But they could observe something very simple. Water left outside under a clear night sky behaved differently from water kept inside. That observation could be repeated, improved, and eventually turned into a technique. But there is an important detail about who could actually enjoy this luxury. Ice wasn't an everyday necessity for ordinary Egyptians. Producing ice this way was highly dependent on local weather conditions and required careful preparation. For most people, the more important cooling methods were much simpler: cool water, shade, ventilation, evaporation, and timing activities around the hottest parts of the day. Ice was special. It was a luxury, and that actually makes the story more interesting, because imagine what a piece of ice would mean in a civilization where most people experienced heat without refrigeration. It wasn't just cold water. It was proof that someone had figured out how to make nature do something that seemed impossible. Water turning solid in the desert, and the secret was hiding above them the entire time. The sky. Every night, the desert became a giant cooling surface. The clear atmosphere allowed heat to escape upward. The dry air reduced moisture-related interference. And under favorable conditions, water could lose enough heat to freeze. No electricity, no compressor, No modern refrigerator, just a shallow container, water, a clear sky, and a surprisingly clever understanding of the environment. So did ancient Egyptians really make ice in the middle of a desert? Under the right conditions, yes. But not because they had some mysterious ancient refrigerator. They exploited a natural phenomenon that still works today. The technology wasn't powerful. It was precise. And that's the lesson. Ancient Egyptians didn't need to make the desert cold. They only needed to understand when the desert itself could help them. During the day, the sun was their enemy. At night, the sky became their freezer. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden technology of ancient Egypt, subscribe to the Ancient Egyptians for more stories about how people thousands of years ago solved problems that seem impossible today. And I'll see you in the next one.